Welcome back to another episode of Psychopedia. This is your co-host, Tank Sinatra, here with my co-host.
Investigators later.
You were not supposed to sing.
Oh. Listen, I catch on quickly. It's not my fault.
I was over there in the house filling up my water bottle, thinking about what just happened.
What was I supposed to do? Sit here and watch?
No, you were set up to sing, obviously. And then I was going to go, you weren't supposed to sing.
So you nailed it.
I did. I nailed it. Welcome to another episode of the Psychopedia podcast. I'm your co-host, Tank Sinatra, here with my hooded co-host.
Investigators later.
Wearing a hood. Very chilly. It's cold up in the loft today.
It's not. I just love hoodies.
Yeah.
I wear hoodies when I research because it puts me in almost like a sensory deprived vibe setting. Like it's, I can still hear obviously, but it just makes me feel like I'm in a
zone.
bubble.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try that on for size today.
What do they call it? In the Social Network where he's like, oh, he's wired in.
Yeah.
You get wired in.
I want to be wired.
Oh, he's wired in? Is he wired in? You still fucking wired in, Mark?
Oh my God.
Andrew Garfield, one of the greatest, maybe actors.
Who does he play?
The guy who they fuck, Severian, Eduardo Severian.
Yes.
Eduardo Saverin.
Didn't he play a Spider-Man?
He is also the best Spider-Man. I know I'm going to get hated for this.
Yo, people gonna hate.
Well, Tobey Maguire, I don't know if you've gone back and watched those Spider-Man episodes.
I was never a fan of Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Me either.
Oh, really?
But the movies were great.
Yes.
But the movies were also horrible.
Not at the time.
Yes, but if you go back and watch it, you're like, this is like, when does the porn start? Because this is the worst acting I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, I never picked up on that.
Oh, it's so bad.
You know the scene in the cafeteria when he slips and all the food goes flying and he catches it on the tray? That actually, he actually really caught all the food on the tray.
So they say.
Okay.
I know. I've seen that myth floating around.
Oh,
I
was impressed.
Of course you're impressed. It's an impossible thing to do. They did 780 takes. Really? How are they not dead?
Well, I enjoyed that scene.
It's great.
Yeah.
But he also he swung.
Shot webs out of his wrist.
He also swung between the buildings. Did you know that?
Listen, we have to get started soon because
we are going to get started right now.
Big ass case today.
After I read off, first of all, if you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're back for the 100th time, welcome home.
Freak.
And if you're here and you love us and you're like, damn, I need more Psychopedia, just head on over to patreon.com/psychopediapod for more of this. 5 bonus episodes a week, depending on what level you're at. When you're a semen demon, you get 5. Little freak, you get 2. It's still 2, though.
Absolutely. Whatever you can swing.
Tankopedia, true crime, unheard. Slaterpedia, bonus, true crime, unheard. Amazing. 3 unhinged episodes because the Tankopedia, whatever. It's a lot of stuff. And we also just had somebody come in and sit in on a live recording with us. And that episode will be out soon. It's going to be a bonus, but it's fantastic. And this is all to say that we're committed to you. Commit to us.
And if you're looking for more, there's a place for that.
There is a place for that. If you're new here, it really helps when you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. On YouTube, do your part, leave a heart. Those videos comes out. We see a lot of hearts. We like it.
Also, I'd like to add, this is the first time I think we're ever mentioning this, which is, it sounds silly to say that, but it's important also. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok.
True.
We are posting clips and reels.
YouTube shorts.
Shorts, videos, whatever they're called. Almost daily at this
We're posting TikToks on Instagram. We're posting TikToks on YouTube.
I don't know the lingo because I ain't cool, but
we're posting clips on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels. And there's just, we're gearing up the content machine and it's getting nuts.
It's getting good. It's getting good.
This train has 12 cars on it now.
We encourage you guys to follow us. That would mean a lot to us as well.
It would mean a lot to us. But before we go, I'm going to read off a couple of Patreon names.
Okay. Yeah.
Real fast. Megan McEwen.
Hey, Megan.
She lacks your genitals. Itty Bitty Tank's Titty Committee.
Ooh.
I know.
Wow.
I know. And if you don't know what any of these mean, Patreon, we have a live global group chat that we run all these things through. So that's just another reason to join. If you want, if you don't, that's fine. Amy Edmondson.
Hi, Amy.
Jenna Freeman. Get Rich or Cry Trying.
Yes. Yes.
And the last one, which in its simplicity, I think might be one of the best names I've ever heard.
Let's hear it.
Freak of Oz.
Freak of Oz?
Yeah, I don't know what it means. It just sounds cool, like
Okay.
Wizard of Oz.
I
but
like it.
Freak of Oz.
I just, sometimes there's like double entendres going on.
Yeah.
So I needed to think that one through to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Oh, I have a gift for you.
I heard, and I saw, and I can't wait to get it. Then we're going to get to the episode because we got to get into it.
It was recently Tank's birthday. I got him 2 items.
By recently, she means 1 month ago, almost to the day.
I'm not really sure why this one took so long to come from Etsy, but it did.
Oh, Etsy.
Yeah, we love Etsy. It just took a really long time to ship. I apologize. But you have a sweatshirt and you had some fresh mango.
I did. That's right.
That's for your original birthday gifts, but here's the 3rd installment.
Okay. I can't wait to see what this is. Should I even open it?
Yes, hurry up. I'm so excited. I waited a month.
Oh my God.
That was a great, great facial expression. Tell our listeners.
It is a Kendrick Lamar pop, what are they called?
Bobblehead, I think.
No, the pop. I thought they were just called pops. No, hold on.
I thought it was a bobblehead. That's what I put into Etsy.
No. Did they bobble? Custom pop. Okay. It's a Kendrick Lamar pop Funko.
Yes, it is.
That's what it is. And
Worth the wait?
is he wearing the Not Like Us outfit?
Probably. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
It would make sense. I'm going to check. There's an Instagram on the back. I'm going to check it out.
So listen, you can take some time alone with him, get to know him a little bit.
That made it sound sexual.
No, stop.
I'm not going to bang a pop Funko.
Not again.
Yeah. I learned my lesson last time.
Okay, and I just want to mention that we are doing a 2-parter on this case because it is a
Too deep.
banger. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so what we're doing today is part 1.
I'm into a 2-parter.
Okay, good.
All right, let's go. Let's
It's
hear
happening whether you're into it or not.
it. Yeah, that's what I'm telling myself. I'm into it.
So without further...
Ado. Wait, what is Kendrick? Without further, yuck, 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 yuck.
Let's get into the case.
Let's get into the case.
Okay. Branches snapped under her bare feet as she tore through the dense, dark Alaskan woods. The towering trees seemed to close in on her with their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands, snagging her clothing and slashing at her skin. Her breath came in ragged bursts of little white clouds forming in the freezing dead of night. Each exhale a reminder that life still clung to her. She had no sense of direction anymore, just the primal need to keep moving, away from him. Behind her, his boots crunched steadily against the fallen leaves and twigs, deliberate yet eerily unhurried. His calm, collected demeanor contrasted her frantic terror. He was a confident, patient predator savoring the hunt. Suddenly, somewhere far too close, the man's voice drifted through the night air, slow and measured, saying, 10.
Oh, fuck that.
Her heart pounded violently in her chest as she instinctively pushed herself harder despite the numbing grip of the biting cold and the relentless terror gnawing at her from within. She could hear his breath now, steady, controlled, as though this was all just a game. Of course, for him, it was. 9, the man's voice now said, louder, closer, like the woods themselves were physically shrinking as she stumbled over to tree root, her body crashing to the ground, her hands now covered in dirt and blood like a snared animal, just how he liked it. 8. His tone was so casual, almost playful. This man was methodical, unhurried, and confident, the voice of a man who knew he had already won. 7.
Oh, God.
6. The sound was closer now, too close. 5. He was toying with her, letting her think she had a chance in order to stretch out the game. 4. 3. 2. Her legs gave out and sent her crashing to the ground, cold mud splashing up around her trembling body. 1. His footsteps stopped just where she began. 0. It was over. She was now undeniably his. This is the case of Alaska's most prolific serial killer and human hunter, Robert Hansen, a.k.a. the Butcher Baker, a.k.a.
Steve.
Bob. I can't believe I laughed. I wanted to deliver that so much better.
Okay, AKA what? What was the final AKA? No. Are you fucking kidding me? Wow. The premonition that I brought forth with that AKA Steve is unbelievable. Wait, say it. Robert Hansen, AKA the Butcher Baker, AKA Bob.
I was trying so hard to do it like that, but it's so funny.
That is unbelievable. I can't believe this. I can't believe what has just happened.
I can't believe my mascara's already running.
I can't believe that just happened. How are you going to top that? I thought you said Bob because it was like, obviously it's not Bob, but it's fucking Bob.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I had to take my hoodie off with the hood that I was really excited to wear because
You know
I
what
laughed
you called before?
so hard that I'm sweating.
You know what you called it before that I liked? Zippy.
Oh, yeah, I call it a zippy, usually.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Without further ado, for real.
We'll see about that.
Robert Christian Hansen was born on February 15th, 1939 in Esterville, Iowa to his American mother, Edna, and his Dutch father, Christian, who was a baker. The family owned a well-known local bakery in Iowa, but moved to West California when Robert was just 3, where they opened another bakery in the hopes of making more money. But after about 7 years of trying to make things work out there, authoritative, domineering Christian, who unilaterally made all the decisions for the entire family, decided to move everyone back to Iowa, this time to a place called Pocahontas, population 2,000. Iowa's Pocahontas County and city are named after Pocahontas, a Native American princess from Jamestown, Virginia.
I want to go there.
In case you were wondering.
I was wondering.
Okay, good thing I had that information for you.
Amazing, as you always do.
Yes. Once there, Christian opened another bakery on Main Street, and they did pretty well. By the age of 10, Robert had only just begun to emerge from the reclusive shell that had defined his early years in California. During those formative years, he rarely ventured beyond the confines of his home and interacted with others only sparingly. His crippling shyness kept him distant from his peers and left him so withdrawn that even the school bullies seemed to overlook him entirely.
Wow.
I remember covering a case, I had to think about it. It's the Korean girl who said she wanted to know what it felt like to kill.
Yeah.
And so she did. She killed.
Exactly what I thought of.
Is it? And we said in that case how she was like such a wallflower that not even the bullies registered her existence. And that's crushing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I would choose being bullied over that necessarily, but I think it really just speaks to like how small his existence must have felt, you know?
It's different for everybody. For some people, like for me, to be ignored is death.
That's what I'm saying.
But I don't think it's that way for everybody.
Yeah.
I think some people would just love flying under the radar.
I think if the alternative is bullying,
Yeah.
you know, but anyway. But this deep social isolation would become a defining part of Robert's troubled personality. Now, shifting focus to his father, Christian, it's evident that he, along with the complex family dynamics in general, played a significant role in shaping the man Robert would later become. And we see this, unfortunately, a lot with killers, particularly serial killers. Christian was a harshly controlling and domineering figure. He demanded that Robert, along with his younger sibling and mother, rise with him at the butt crack of dawn each and every day to eat breakfast with him at the table before he opened his bakery, without exception.
So annoying.
And this rigid routine took its toll on young Robert.
How old is he? Ish?
We're talking pre-10 at this point.
Wow.
By early afternoon, Robert was exhausted, a mental and physical fatigue that drained him of any interest or energy he may have had for attempting to make friends or play with neighborhood kids after school.
Yeah.
All of his days followed an unyielding, exhausting schedule. Up at dawn, go to school, dinner promptly at 6 p.m., and household chores until bedtime. And that was his life. On top of that, Robert, as a young preteen now, was also burdened with additional tasks at his father's bakery, like scrubbing ovens, mopping floors, and setting rat traps.
Fucking lazy father.
He sounds like a horrific father on so many levels. We're getting into it, obviously, right now.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he was, instilling in his son work ethic, and I'm going to make a man out of him. That was a very, very common theme with Christian, was making a man out of Robert.
That's applicable to an extent.
Right. These were the tools he felt he had to do that, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
I disagree with it, but I don't know that I would actually say he was coming from a bad place even, but he ended up doing bad things.
Yeah.
So this grueling routine continued to leave Robert feeling perpetually exhausted, the point where total fatigue became his constant and only companion. Unsurprisingly, Robert began falling asleep in class. He showed little interest or passion for anything, a detachment that only intensified Christian's relentless belief that Robert needed to be pushed harder in order to succeed.
Of course. And can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you used to fall asleep in class?
I never actually fell asleep, but I mean, I also tried not to yawn because I never wanted to get in trouble. But I remember being like very, very tired.
Yeah. I think that was a huge contributing factor to my lack of success in school.
You would hardcore fall asleep?
Oh, I fell asleep dozens of times.
Dave also used to fall asleep.
I was a bad sleeper. I'd go to bed late. I'd worry in my bed for an hour or two. I'd have fights with people in the fucking locker room in my brain. You know?
I mean, it's sad when you think about that, right? But this is why as teachers, I feel like there needs to be like, kindness shown first to like all students, because like Dave used to get like reamed out by his teachers. And it's like, maybe find out what's going on. Like in Robert's case, maybe find out if he's being forced to wake up at 5 a.m. every single morning. Or in your case, if the kid's struggling with anxiety and can't sleep.
Yeah.
Like kindness first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
To Christian, who made no effort to hide his disappointment or explosive temper, Robert's lack of drive was seen as a failure of discipline that demanded stricter enforcement. This would often come either in the form of long, tedious lectures where Christian would drill Robert on virtues that he expected Robert to embody, or waking Robert up even earlier to take on more chores, either at home or at the bakery. For Christian, there just was no limit to how hard Robert needed to be pushed. By this point in his tumultuous childhood, I would call it, a pivotal event occurred, one that would ultimately have profound and far-reaching consequences. Pop quiz.
Oh.
What happened? A, Robert's mother passed away. B, Robert developed a stutter. C, Robert caught his father with a sex worker.
Stutter, sex worker, what was the first one again?
Mother passed away.
A.
No.
C?
Nope.
B?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I know it's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
Robert developed a really significant stutter, which proved to be an incredibly debilitating and embarrassing challenge that he was forced to confront nearly every time he opened his mouth to speak.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I was at CVS the other day picking up a prescription, and the guy was talking totally normal the whole time. And then at the end, he goes, like he starts like going into a stutter, but for like 10 seconds. And I was, in my mind, I was like, brother, I'm here for you. You take as long as you need to.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, so what I learned, because I used to date someone by date, I was in 8th grade and we held hands like 3 times, but he had a stutter. And I remember like willing myself to not jump in to help him finish his thought or his sentence, because I wanted to relieve him of what I knew was embarrassing him. Which was not being able to get a sentence out.
Oh, I go into full blown love,
exactly,
connection mode.
Even in 8th grade, because I remember my mother speaking to me about it. She's such a good mother. Like she knew to prep me for that. Like not doing that and just waiting it out and being there with him.
Or being like as he's stuttering like this.
Go to YouTube if anybody wants to see that face.
Yeah. Come on, bro.
Terrible.
I have no time for people.
The pressure of speaking in front of others would only exacerbate the stutter and make it even more difficult for Robert to express himself freely and confidently, which led to further feelings of isolation and frustration. And this just took a tremendous emotional toll on Robert. In addition to his prominent stutter, Robert also developed a severe case of raging acne that left lasting scars etched across his face for the rest of his life and kind of became one of his defining features. Like the stutter, the relentless public breakouts significantly impacted his self-esteem and caused him to further withdraw.
And it hurts.
Yeah, physical symptoms too.
Yeah.
The scars, both physical and emotional, made it difficult for Robert to forge connections and left him longing for acceptance while battling the internal turmoil of feeling different and undesirable. According to Robert, and this is a quote, I looked like a freak and I sounded like one.
No, you didn't.
No.
No. And if you have a zit, you don't
No.
like a freak.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Because we feel so much empathy for like little boy Robert. It's insane what we're going to be feeling about him at the end.
Him, but also I think about people listening to this. Like, I remember being younger and being very tied up in my appearance, vain, whatever. And I had a zit, and some woman that I worked with was like, oh, I want you to meet my daughter. I was like 19 or 20 at the time. I had a zit, like fucking like a horn.
You're like, maybe next week?
I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to meet her. Like, I just couldn't.
Right.
Like, but it was one zit.
It's
you know what I
very,
mean?
very public experience. It is. I also feel very badly for people who have that type of a struggle.
Yeah.
In terms of his academic performance, especially in the context of ongoing bullying, which happened at this point.
Oh, now he's getting bullied?
Now he's getting bullied. He's older and he's not quite a wallflower anymore because of the stutter and the skin issue.
Oh, so he's
not blending. Now he's a target.
Yeah.
Robert unsurprisingly struggled significantly in school. Furthermore, Robert was also a lefty, like a freak, which according to his domineering father was unacceptable.
What a loser.
What
He was
a weirdo.
probably possessed by the devil.
He might be.
That's what they used to think.
I know.
Yeah.
Tank is a lefty, which is why I was teasing and said it was a freaky thing.
I'm a proud lefty.
My father's a lefty. Yeah, so I don't think it's a freak. I just wanted to tease Tank just so I don't get hate messages. Tank.
I think you said Hank.
I said Tank.
Okay.
We'll let the listeners decide.
Yes, very well. Taryn Flesherton, where are you at?
Christian refused to allow his son to write like a left-handed freak. And
why are you doubling down on it?
Because I can't stop once I start. By the way, I used to want to be a lefty because I'm like slightly ambidextrous. Like I am stronger in my left hand, so I open things with my left hand, or like if I'm lifting something, I lift with my left hand. So I used to like walk around being like, I'm a lefty and a righty. So I actually think it's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
The oppressive tactic, that Christian employed, which was to tie Robert's left hand behind his back so that Robert would be forced to learn how to use his right hand, not only stifled Robert's natural abilities to write, but it also deepened his feelings of inadequacy and resentment. As a kid, Robert had his hand quite literally tied against his back and his back up against the wall, metaphorically.
Was being lefty back then like being gay today? Like people just don't understand that it's in you or it's not?
Maybe. I mean, I think obviously they thought it was a choice, right? Because they're trying to like just get him to focus on using his right hand. It should be as simple as that.
No, they literally thought people that wrote with their left hand were like evil or somehow broken people.
I know. Ridiculous.
That's crazy. I mean, more and more people obviously are learning that like gayness is just, it's like being straight. You don't choose it. It is what it is. You're attracted to who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
As a lefty, man, I can't imagine. Obviously people make jokes, but I can't imagine actually being like oppressed or shamed for it. That's never happened.
So there wasn't a day that went by where Robert didn't feel like a disappointment to his father and to everyone else who had to look at his acne and or speak to him with his stutter. He had no friends to speak of, and girls his age wouldn't even look at him. Feeling the weight of Robert's social isolation, Christian decided that it would be up to him, as always, to fix his son and to instill strength and masculinity in the otherwise meek and weak shell of a teenager.
Yeah, man, of course. Can't let your son be a human being.
Right. And with that less than loving outlook, Christian resolved to make a man out of Robert yet. Pop quiz.
Oh, no.
What did Christian do to instill manly virtues into his otherwise weak, pathetic son? A. Christian hired a sex worker and forced Robert to engage with her, but Robert found himself unable to get an erection. B. Christian took Robert on a group hunting trip with other dads and teens, along with a truckload of loaded rifles and a goal of killing. C. Christian introduced him to Nazi propaganda films and military documentaries, and then would quiz him at night about strategies, tactics, and military maneuvers.
Sex worker, hunting, Nazi. All of them are
pretty
bananas. Yeah.
And two of them were made up in the furnace of my brain.
I know. I'm going to go with A.
Hired a sex worker. No.
C.
Nope.
It was too obvious, B, I thought.
Well, if it's hitting you in the face, maybe take the hit. I don't know.
Yeah,
Go
true.
with it.
Very true. Good point.
He took him to a hunting party.
And by the way, you do trick me on purpose.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not above admitting that.
So.
And this is when, on this hunting trip, for the first time in Robert's life, that being different from his peers felt good. Because while the other boys were new boot goofing around, Robert was laser focused, pun intended, on learning the art of wielding a rifle and taking a life. He was enthralled by every intricate detail of the weapon he was handed, from the chill of the cold steel frame to the precise alignment of the sight, from the gleaming chamber that held its lethal potential to the formidable muzzle that pointed menacingly ahead. Each aspect seemed to pulse with a dark energy, inviting both awe and trepidation as he contemplated the power it wielded, and crucially, the power it gave him by extension. In that moment, on that trip, the weapon transformed into more than just an object. It became a symbol of raw strength and the weight of choices yet to be made. Now, when Robert woke up each morning at 5, he no longer dreaded getting out of bed. Instead, he eagerly embraced the thrill of honing his skills at the gun range following his chores. He also dedicated hours each day to strengthening his skill set with the bow and arrow behind his dad's bakery, as well as perfecting his knife-throwing technique. Robert was obsessed with the idea of achieving a silent kill. At this stage, Hansen family dinners at 6 p.m. sharp began to feature freshly hunted game that he put on the table.
Robert?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was an excellent hunter, which we're definitely going to be driving home today. Robert, who hitherto had only ever felt unseen, unworthy, and inadequate, began accumulating an impressive collection of trophies and medals for his marksmanship.
Oh, really?
And the more he indulged in his new sport, the more he excelled. He simply never tired of killing, and hate it or love it, / hate it only.
Yeah, the underdog's on top.
He was good.
Yeah.
With that, the moment Robert turned 18 in 1957, he signed up for the U.S. Army Reserve and moved to Fort Dix, New Jersey. He served for just 1 year before being discharged, at which point he joined the local police academy as an assistant drill instructor back in Pocahontas, Iowa.
Okay.
But before leaving the Army, Robert had one pivotal experience that would leave a lasting impact on his psyche, further fueling the darkness that would come to define his later years. You see, what?
I thought it was a pop quiz.
No, I know, I got you. No.
Hope you're having fun.
I'm having a great time today. You see, after earning the distinction of Soldier of the Week, Robert received a day pass to explore New York City. And while he was exploring the concrete jungle, Robert sought out the services of a sex worker to whom he lost his virginity. But the entire experience left him feeling woefully disappointed and unfulfilled, having offered none of the emotional satisfaction that he felt entitled to have during his deflowering.
Yeah.
After the experience, Robert later reflected on the encounter and said, quote, "I got to feel it, but that was about it. Everything was strictly slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. I didn't even get a hug, and I wasn't allowed to sleep in the bed." End quote. The transactional nature of the experience of his first time having sex was in stark contrast to what Robert had hoped to achieve, which was something far deeper and more meaningful. Far deeper.
That's what he said.
Sorry. And more meaningful, a connection that would validate his sense of worth and ease his feelings of isolation. But that didn't happen.
Obviously.
Leaving his unmet expectations to fester into deep bitterness and frustration. And of course, it was the sex worker's fault. In a later interview, he indicated that it was her responsibility to have given him the experience he wanted, and it was the woman's job to bring the warmth and connection into the bedroom. Incel attitude much?
Yeah, where'd you hear that, bro? Christian?
My God. Now, as I said, after being discharged from the Army, Robert returned to Pocahontas and joined the police academy. On paper, the now 21-year-old seemed to be in a good place. He had a stable job that allowed him to carry a gun, which was a bonus, had successfully completed his time in the military, and was living independently. But internally, Robert was consumed by a simmering rage and an ever-growing social anxiety that gnawed at him daily. He struggled to connect with people his own age and found himself only comfortable engaging with girls barely older than children, whose innocence and naivete, thank you, made them less intimidating to him.
Wait, so he was interacting with girls who were
They were like very young teenage girls. You know what I mean? Like he was
like 13, 14?
Yeah, they didn't give specific ages, but my understanding it was like young high school kids.
And he was interacting with them
and he was 21 because he felt comfortable with them. They didn't challenge him. You know what I mean? I don't think he had expectations of them, so he felt more comfortable with them.
You know what's so funny? As an adult, I've always been more intimidated by kids even than adults.
Well, kids will say whatever the fuck they want. So I'm always like, what's this? How's this person going to sell me out?
It's also a lose-lose situation. Like there was a guy that I knew that got attacked by a bunch of kids on a city bike, which I've told that story a very long time ago.
Yeah, you have told that story.
They were throwing rocks at him, calling him pussy.
You're gonna lick that white dog shit.
And he's wearing a helmet as a 52-year-old man with a backpack on a city bike. Like you like maybe you should be getting rocks thrown at you.
I don't know.
But no, I'm 100% kidding. But what are you going to do? Fight 12-year-olds?
Do I get any credit for the line I just dropped?
The white dog shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Step brothers. So again, he's connecting in his world with girls who are barely older than children because he finds them less intimidating.
Yeah.
And this is why at 21 years old, when Robert met 18-year-old Phoebe Paget, a local girl with whom he felt comfortable enough to strike up a conversation, he quickly went on to marry her. I think she was technically 17 when they got married. I'm not really sure why I wrote 18 in here because I'm recalling the research and she was 17. Once again, Robert set his expectations irrationally high in this marriage, just as he had done with the sex worker that he lost his virginity to. He believed marriage would solve all of his problems, expecting it to instantly repair the mental and emotional damage from his upbringing.
You know what I think that comes from, by the way?
What?
The expectations? Because he was, against his will, forced to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this happens with people, especially people who have had a tough life or gone through something tough. They look at somebody else who hasn't been through what they've been through or is experiencing something much less. So like, let's say somebody grew up in an environment, or let's say somebody comes back from the military and they come back from combat and somebody is complaining about the supermarket being out of mango. And they're like, how could you complain about that?
How the fuck did you know that happened last night, by the way?
No.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
There was no mango. Made a special trip to ShopRite for dried mango and it wasn't there and I complained.
Did you get shamed by any veterans?
No, thank God. But I feel shame now.
But there's just the juxtaposition of like experience. So growing up in that kind of environment where you were forced, like he kind of probably thinks that like everyone should do everything for me.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
I did everything for my father.
Right. That's what was instilled in his brain, that to be like a successful person, quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
These are all of the things that you need to accomplish in a day and all the things that you need to provide.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good point. But the reality, of course, did not live up to his fantasies. And every time he looked at his young wife, his anger and resentment grew as he realized that she wasn't the solution to the years of unresolved issues he carried.
Yeah, obviously.
Instead of improving his life, Phoebe's presence seemed to amplify his failures. His stutter returned and dragged his already fragile self-esteem down with it. Frustrated and disillusioned, Robert lashed out, punishing Phoebe with his fists. At the same time, he nurtured a growing thirst for vengeance against anyone who had wronged him in his childhood. So instead of things getting like, some clarity coming as you get older and overcoming, he's kind of going back. He's now like all of those feelings are emerging and turning into real palpable anger.
Yeah.
He began fantasizing about hunting them down with his rifle, stalking them like helpless prey as his darker urges took root and grew stronger. He started to rapidly devolve. Then, Robert was arrested for committing which of the following crimes?
Pop quizzing people?
Yeah. If it was a crime, man, you should throw away the key with me. A, selling firearms to local children from his old school district.
Oh my God.
B, assaulting a female employee at his dad's bakery. C, setting a school bus garage on fire.
Selling guns to kids, assaulting someone at his dad's bakery, or setting fire to something.
A school bus garage.
School bus assaulting. A.
No.
Fuck, man, I'm sucking today.
It's not your day.
B.
No.
He set a fire to a school bus?
Yeah, it was not a small fire. On December 7th, 1960, Robert Hansen burnt down the bus garage, which they refer to as the bus barn, owned by the Board of Education where he went to school.
Okay.
As he later indicated, quote, "I just hated that place with a divine passion. I would do anything and everything I could think of to get back at that monster school that I convinced myself was out to do Bob Hansen wrong."
Yeah. Because you matter that much.
Yeah, because exactly.
Everyone's always thinking about you.
For Robert, the school bus garage at Gravedale High was a symbol of the bullying, rejection, and humiliation that he endured throughout his school years, which I feel bad about. That part, I feel bad that happened to him.
Yeah.
So he took a gas can, doused the place, and set it ablaze. And listen to this. At the time, Robert was serving as a volunteer firefighter, which gave him the twisted thrill of returning to the scene of his own crime to help extinguish the flames.
Which is very common.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. He was essentially hiding in plain sight, and he absolutely reveled in the chaos that he caused, savoring the reactions of those around him, particularly the firemen who had once been friends with his father. He was like getting off on a lot of things here.
Yeah.
Watching them all scramble to control the fire, unaware that he was the one responsible, gave Robert a perverse sense of power and satisfaction. 3 out of the 7 buses were completely destroyed in that fire. But he wasn't as smart as he thought he was, and he wasn't as, slick. Because alas,
They never are.
it was soon discovered that Robert Hansen was responsible for the not-so-little act of arson.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was another younger person involved at the time who ratted him out.
Okay.
At the time, Robert underwent a lie detector test, which are worthless, P.S., which he failed despite his insistence on his innocence.
Well, maybe they weren't worthless in that situation.
Well, maybe. But typically, there's just so many ways to fucking fool a lie detector test. So, right, even a broken clock is correct twice a day.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
During the test, Robert inadvertently confessed to having additional plans of blowing up the police chief's house.
Inadvertently?
He's like, yeah. Before those plans could come to fruition, Robert was officially arrested for the fire and sentenced to 3 years at the Anamosa State Penitentiary, marking the start of a lengthy series of incarcerations. During his 6-month stay at Anamosa, Robert's father, listen to this, Christian, took an active role in defending his son. He gathered petitions for Robert's release and became a vocal advocate for Robert, firmly convinced of his son's innocence.
Yeah.
However, after months behind bars, Robert ultimately and inexplicably decided to finally confess to the crime that had landed him in prison. And this confession left Christian so humiliated and publicly shamed. In response, he took it hard. He sold his bakery, moved out of Pocahontas entirely, relocated to Minnesota, and purchased a resort on Leech Lake in an effort to start fresh and distance himself from the disgrace brought on by his felonious son.
So he took his family, his wife, and did he have other kids or
Well,
just?
he had a sibling, but I believe the sibling at this point was also a young adult.
Oh, yeah, okay. Leech Lake, terrible fucking name for a lake. I would never
Awful.
go in that lake.
Awful. How do you advertise it? Like, come to Leech Lake. There's not actually leeches, but if you don't acknowledge the fact that there aren't leeches, you're not getting people there.
We know how it sounds. Okay?
There it is.
We understand that it's a little trepidatious to go into something called Leech Lake, but we promise there are no leeches.
Sounds painful. I'll give
Sounds
you
like
that.
something a person with a lake full of leeches would say,
Dun,
obviously.
dun, 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 dun,
Stand by me?
dun, 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 dun.
That scene really stuck with me.
It really stuck with me too. That's why I'm singing it.
Yeah.
Now, during Robert's time behind bars, 2 significant events unfolded. First, his wife Phoebe divorced him. And second, he was evaluated by a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with an infantile personality fixated on revenge against those who had wronged him. Furthermore, the doctor identified two distinct sets of mental health issues as underlying Robert's self-destructive behavior and mood swings: manic depression and periodic schizophrenic episodes, both rooted in traumatic childhood. In the early 1960s, these issues were treated with medication almost exclusively, leading the psychiatrist to recommend Robert's release after just 20 months in prison, as long as he agreed to take his medication, meaning therapy wasn't really a thing. It was mostly seen as oh, it's medical, take your medication.
Yeah, good luck.
However, there was no legal requirement for Robert to take the prescribed medication, nor was there any oversight from the state to ensure that he was receiving any kind of proper treatment. And you can guess what eventually wound up happening. At 25, Robert re-entered society without any oversight, unmarried, and unemployed, and he stopped taking his medication.
He got medicated for what? Which particular, was it schizophrenia?
Schizophrenic episodes and manic depression.
Yeah, I mean, that, people, I always feel like if you're sick, mentally ill, why would you not take your medication? And it's
because you're mentally perhaps struggling and maybe not able to make the best decisions.
You detach from reality.
Right.
What's medicine at that point? And then manic, depressive, they stop taking their medication when they get manic.
I also find what happens is you take medication, and this isn't just medication for mental health, right? You take medication, you're feeling better because of the medication, and you think, I no longer need to take this medication.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. My son is on his 6th day of amoxicillin because he had strep throat 6 days ago, and he cannot understand why he has to still take his medication for the next 4 days because it's a 10-day script.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, you can't stop taking it just because you feel better. It hasn't.
Does he know why?
Well, I explained it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might make that my whole thing, like Bob Barker with the spay and neuter your pets. Finish your fucking antibiotics. You're going to kill us all.
Oh, yeah.
You don't finish it. You have personally, person not finishing your antibiotics, have made that virus stronger.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yep. And then the next time when you get sick in a week, you can't take that medication again because you just took it. So now we're fucking around with different medications.
Yeah.
With nothing left for him in Pocahontas, Robert moved to Leech Lake, Minnesota to live with his parents again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he got he got out of prison. He obviously was not welcome back into the police academy.
Yeah.
His wife divorced him while he was behind bars. He had nothing left. Yeah, he went back to be with his family. He worked on the grounds of the lake. So despite the change in scenery, however, he still harbored deep resentment towards those he believed had wronged him back home. His obsession with guns, by the way, only intensified at this point.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, perhaps, Robert turned to a life of crime. Over the next several years, authorities arrested him multiple times for petty larceny and other assorted offenses, sending him in and out of prison like a revolving door.
Yeah.
In 1963, Robert met and married a deeply religious woman named Darla Henriksen, who believed that she could heal the broken man with the scarred face and stutter. Darla, a teacher working with disabled children, felt that the voice of God spoke to her, convincing her that there was something inherently redeemable in Robert, something worth saving. And for about 3 years, she succeeded in keeping him on the straight and narrow. Robert held steady jobs at various Safeway supermarket bakeries, and together they began to build a stable life. They had 2 children, Christy and Johnny, and Darla didn't tolerate any of his outbursts and insisted that he attend church with her and fill his remaining hours up with hard work.
Yeah.
So I guess she was like, an idle mind. What's the expression?
Idle hands are a devil's playground.
Right, exactly. So she kept him at church or busy doing work.
Yeah.
Then, by 1967, the couple saved enough money to relocate to Anchorage, Alaska, a frontier town undergoing a dramatic transformation at this point in American history.
Yeah.
The discovery of oil had sparked an economic boom, bringing an influx of people from the lower 48, including pipeline laborers and transient sex workers, all of whom were making Anchorage a city in flux and ripe with both opportunity and temptation for someone like Robert.
It's so interesting that sex workers followed the boom.
They followed the money. They followed also a lot of men moved to Anchorage to take on the laborer jobs. And then in their wake were the sex workers. But there's actually an interesting side note here with respect to the influx of sex workers at this point. So many of the strip clubs in the area were run by a Seattle-based talent company called Talents West, which was controlled by Frank Colasurcio, a Seattle businessman, in quotes, convicted felon, and alleged organized crime boss.
I was going to say, why would Alaskan people let some guy come in and run their strip clubs? Because he'll kill you.
Right, he'll break your kneecaps. According to an author named Leland Hale, who's done like extensive research on Robert Hansen, he also wrote a book called The Butcher Baker. Their job, the Talents West agency, was to essentially locate and poach girls from the lower 48 to bring them up to Alaska as well as to Honolulu, Hawaii, to dance in their clubs, specifically the clubs in Anchorage that Frank started to oversee. Ones like the Great Alaskan Bush Company, the Good Times Club, Booby Trap, the Fancy Moose, Kit Kat, and the Wild Cherry. Talents West would promise to send the clubs a new batch of talent or a new batch of women every week. But as indicated by Leland Hale, the entire operation was a scam from top to bottom, and one that could make Frank $200,000 in a good month. Here's how it worked. Talents West would advertise for dancers in classified ads, enticing women from across the lower 48 with promises of good pay and a fresh start. Initially, the company would cover airfare, housing, and even pay the dancers as employees, creating an appealing opportunity for women who were looking to escape their pasts. They would also put them up in hotels. However, when Frank was busted in May of 1982, which is a little like after basically the time we are in the case. But when he was busted in May 1982 for failing to pay workers' comp, he reclassified the dancers as independent entertainers, which shifted the financial burden onto them. So under this new arrangement, the dancers were now required to pay Talents West for the privilege of working. They had to repay their airfare, cover rent for the housing that was provided, and by housing, it was a shitbox with a mattress on the floor. Repay the hotel costs when they were put in a hotel, when they were initially flown to Anchorage, and even had to pay a daily fee just to perform at the clubs.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they have to pay back those things if they were shifted from employees to independent contractors?
Entertainers, I guess it's like, you know how like hairstylists have to pay for their chair at a hair salon?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's something similar to that. So many of the women quickly fell into debt, a deliberate design that kept them trapped in a cycle of financial dependence on the company. Those who attempted to leave were often forcibly returned and compelled to continue working. This entire system was not just exploitation, it was human trafficking, with vulnerable women being manipulated, coerced, and controlled under the guise of employment. What seemed like an opportunity for a better life was, in reality, a dangerous trap designed to keep them bound to Talents West, profiting off their labor and suffering. Robert wasted no time and quickly opened up Hansen's Bakery in a prime location, which was located in a strip mall on the corner of 9th and Ingra. The spot was ideal. It was situated on one of Anchorage's main thoroughfares, ensuring a steady flow of customers. And again, now Anchorage was like booming with people.
People love bread.
They do, and their coffee. But what made the location even more strategic for Robert's darker inclinations was its proximity to Anchorage's infamous red light district, known as the Tenderloin District. This area, bustling with sex workers and transient individuals, provided Robert with easy access to a very vulnerable population, which made it a convenient hub for both his business and the disturbing compulsions that simmered beneath the surface.
I wonder why they call it the Tenderloin District also, because there's one in San Francisco.
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz. Meat glue.
When, where, and how did the Tenderloin District originally get that beefy name?
Wow.
A, in 1876 in New York, when a corrupt police captain took bribes in the entertainment district of Manhattan so that he could afford tenderloin, which was a better cut of meat. You might want to take notes. I feel like each one is so long. B,
Carnivore cop took bribes, got it.
That was so good. B, in 1902 in Chicago, when a renowned butcher opened a restaurant that famously served sex workers steak meals at a fraction of the price in exchange for their services. C, in 1878 in Boston, after a surge in gang activity led to young men's bodies turning up, gruesomely eviscerated, their flesh likened to tenderloin.
Okay, so cop gets bribed.
In New York.
Um,
A butcher offers steak for sex.
Butchers offer steak for sex.
In Chicago.
And Boston, bodies turning up that look like meat. A.
Yes.
You know why I knew that?
No.
No, I'm not going to tell you that. What the hell am I thinking?
Come on.
Because tenderloin doesn't just refer to sex workers. It's like any area that the people who are, I don't know, whatever they call them, undesirable, drug addicts, homeless people, mentally ill, sex workers, all get corralled into this. No, gangs I'm not 100% sure about. But they get corralled into this area where they're kind of like left alone.
Yes.
And not bothered by the police.
Exactly right. So in 1876 in New York, a bribe-loving police captain named Alexander Clubber Williams encouraged police corruption in a shitty neighborhood filled with vice, famously saying that cops taking bribes could afford tenderloin, a better cut of meat.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the case. Robert's proximity to sex workers in 1970s Anchorage has long fueled debate about how much his environment influenced the escalation of his crimes. While it seems inevitable that Robert would have eventually acted on his violent impulses no matter where he was, the ease of access to vulnerable, marginalized women in Anchorage undeniably accelerated his descent into serial murder.
Yeah.
Yet, I don't believe, and I know you will agree, that the mere presence of these women triggered his killing. It wasn't simply because they were there. It's more complex. As with many predators, it was the potent mix of circumstance and opportunity converging with an already deeply ingrained darkness.
Opportunity is huge, though.
It is huge. I guess it could have contributed towards the escalation. I just don't think it made a murderer out of him.
No. But this thing with kids, or young men looking at porn today, is a huge fucking problem.
Yeah.
Back before computers, you kind of had to go, all right, I'm gonna walk into the store, I'm gonna grab a Playboy, and I'm just gonna put it down like it's normal, and I'm gonna pay for it, and I'm gonna leave. Okay, you have to gas yourself up, I imagine.
Right.
But you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And if you walked out of there buying porn magazine in relation to what people look at today, they'd call the cops.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right.
You had to have there was multiple physical and emotional barriers in the way. So with his proximity to these vulnerable girls, was he a killer? Yes. Was he going to kill? Yes. Did it go a lot faster because he had access to so many vulnerable women? Also, yes.
Right. Now, at first, Anchorage was less about the women and more about the animals for Robert Hansen.
Yeah.
Because shortly after moving there, Robert became a highly respected hunter, sought out by the locals to join them on hunting trips.
Really?
Yeah, and Robert really absolutely excelled at hunting and was setting new records in the region, left, right, and center, with the bow and arrow and a rifle.
There's so much wildlife out there.
Oh my God. I had it written down originally here in my script, but then I took it out because I'm like, I don't want to keep everybody here for 3 years, but he came in third place for caribou, 10th for bear, 11th for moose. You know what I mean? It was all these animals. It was wild.
Yeah.
Now I wish I just kept it in because I talked about it anyway, but I didn't have the real numbers.
We talked to, also you said he was setting records and you're talking about 10th place. I don't know what that's about.
So funny you say that because it goes up to 50. Many of these competitions went up to 50. It's so funny you say that because I thought he got 34th or something. And in one publication that I read, why even mention that he placed 34th? But then I read because it goes up to 50.
34th place is 33rd loser. Do you remember in the Israel Keys episode where we talked about the polar bears?
No.
This town in Alaska, it's all of the occupants there, all of the citizens there leave their doors open to their cars.
Oh, you did talk about that in the Israel Keys episode, but tell us again because it's fascinating.
Well, it's just there's too many polar bears in the area for comfort. And if you see a polar bear, you don't want to be locked out of a place. If you're in a giant parking lot, a polar bear pops up from behind a car, you jump in the first car that you see.
Right.
So everyone leaves their car doors open.
Have you been to Alaska, by the way?
No.
Stunning.
I know.
He began donating his surplus game to the local church and to the Pope and Young Club, which is an organization dedicated to promoting and preserving the sport of bow hunting. He also took pride in teaching young kids how to hunt, which further solidified his reputation within the community and allowed this wolf to continue hiding in sheep's clothing. And for a time, it appeared that Robert had found a distraction for his darker urges, at least on the surface, because that illusion shattered on November 11th, 1971, when Robert decided to follow a female customer named Susan Marie Heppard home from his bakery.
A customer?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was going after the red light district.
So he gets there.
Okay.
He gets there. Once in front of Susan's apartment, Robert asked her out on a date, despite the fact that he was married. Susan, who worked as a real estate secretary, declined, and Robert left. But the rejection festered and wound up consuming him.
Oh, so he didn't follow her home to kill her. He followed her home to ask her out.
Right.
Okay, but then she said no.
Exactly. So a week and a half later, on November 22nd, Robert returned to Susan's home with a gun and a plan to abduct her. Fortunately, his plan was thwarted as Susan's roommates called the police and he was arrested before he could carry out his sinister intentions. But according to Robert, he had first seen Susan walking around downtown and felt an immediate attraction. True to form, he stalked her for a little bit after that until he decided that he wanted to, quote, talk to her. But then, and this is a quote from him again, one thing led to another and oh boy.
You'd never believe what happened.
Exactly. And he says this with like a giggle. Like,
Yeah.
It's funny, you wouldn't believe it. I had to then almost try and kidnap her.
Yeah. The things a man has to do for love.
Exactly.
Right?
But this period crucially marked the beginning of Robert's official descent into his darkest crimes and the development of a truly twisted modus operandi: stalking, abducting, sexually assaulting, hunting, and ultimately killing sex workers. When discussing sitting in his car on 4th Avenue in Anchorage, watching the sex workers walk their beat, Robert later said, quote, "It gave me this here sexual big blow-up charge."
Don't you know? He gave him this big here blow-up sexual charge.
Yeah, nice. Now, Anchorage at the time was not exactly a bustling metropolis, even though, it had the oil thing going for it.
Yeah.
But it only had around 150,000 residents. And yet Robert made little effort to conceal his identity as he went on to prey upon innocent women. While he made the small effort to pose as different professionals, like an attorney wearing a suit one time, a professional photographer after, his pockmarked, easily recognizable face would always remain exposed.
Yeah. So that population of 150,000 seems, to me, it seems like a lot. But I don't understand scale, and I don't think anybody does, especially in a bustling town where it's maybe spread out, it's maybe not. But the town where we live, like just in this area, there's like 300,000 people here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if between your house and my house, bodies started showing up all over the place, like, yeah, dude, you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
Especially if it's half the size.
Right.
And you're recognizable.
I think that had a lot to do. I mean, he got away with it for a long time.
150,000 seems like you could do anything in that crowd. And
Right.
Nobody would ever find out.
Right.
No.
No, not at all.
No.
Although you could keep getting away with it if law enforcement doesn't give a shit. That's something else.
Robert Pickton.
Exactly. So anyway, when he would attack women, especially in the beginning, he would often get caught. But
Oh, he would.
But a sickening theme of this case is that despite the serious nature of the ongoing charges Robert would face for very serious crimes like rape and kidnapping,
Yeah.
Robert would simply cooperate with the DA's office, who in return would let him off with barely a slap on the wrist.
Wow.
Because really, at the end of the day, these were just sex workers we're talking about anyway, right? They were
Yes.
probably just lying prostitutes, as Hansen would refer to them as.
Unless disappeared.
Unless disappeared, that's right.
And maybe the infrastructure wasn't there yet.
No,
It was.
yeah. It definitely was. We're obviously this is a two-parter, right? So we're really going to get into the weeds of like what was done and what wasn't done.
Yeah.
And there were definitely some like very good apples in the Anchorage State Police Department, but by and large, as sex workers started disappearing and bodies started turning up, it
Yeah.
just when it would ever come down to Robert's word versus, somebody who may have survived an attack or whatever, his word was always taken.
Yeah.
Of course, not keeping Robert Hansen in check obviously only allowed his depravity to flourish. Because on Christmas Day, 1971, just a month after his first recorded kidnapping attempt of Susan Heppard, the body of an 18-year-old young woman named Celia Beth Van Zanten was discovered in a ravine east of Anchorage in McHugh Creek State Park. Her wrists had been bound behind her back with speaker wire, and her body displayed signs of sexual assault.
Ugh.
Additionally, a large cut had been made across her chest with a hunting knife. By the time she was found, she had already frozen to death in the sub-zero temperatures of that Alaskan winter night. Forensic evidence confirmed that Celia had actually been alive when she was abandoned naked in the ravine.
Oh my
And tragically,
God.
she froze to death while hiding from her attacker, who, unbeknownst to investigators, was the man they repeatedly let out of jail early and hadn't been surveilling.
Freezing to death is crazy.
I know.
To me to think about that as I don't know what happens. I'm going to look it up after this episode, but I mean, being cold sucks. Bad.
My understanding is right before death, you're overcome with a surge of heat.
Oh, really?
I think as your nerves are firing off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. On the night of her disappearance, Celia was at home with her two older brothers, Tom and David, who were watching a movie and smoking pot. Around 8:30 p.m., Celia decided to head to the nearby Buy Low store just 3 blocks away to grab some soda. As she left, she mentioned to her brothers that she had plans to babysit after she was getting the soda. Now, witnesses saw Celia walking toward the store between 8:45 and 9 p.m., but she never made it there. When she didn't return, her brothers assumed that she'd been picked up by a friend, and they also remembered that she had a babysitting gig.
Yeah.
But they didn't report her missing until 2 days later.
Wow.
By then, investigators had already identified the frozen body found, butchered by the lake, as being Celia's. Now, as law enforcement began to investigate Celia's death after her body was discovered, an informant came forward with a crucial piece of information, and that informant was an 18-year-old young woman named Robin Patterson, who had been working the streets to pay for her heroin habit on the night of December 19th. Robin told Sergeant Gilmore with the Anchorage State Troopers that on December 19th, she was in the parking lot of a drinking spot called the Nevada Club when she was kidnapped at gunpoint by a man who said he'd kill her if she didn't do what he wanted. She described this man as being between 23 and 28 years old, around 5'8", 5'9", slender, having pock-marked skin, a stutter, and wearing horn-rimmed glasses. The very horn-rimmed glasses that one Robert Hansen wore.
After fucking idiot.
After tying her hands with leather shoelaces, Robert drove Robin south on the Seward Highway. During the journey, he repeatedly pulled off the road, claiming that he wanted to make love to her while attempting to kiss her and forcing her to strip down completely naked to prevent her from escaping. He also told her that he wanted to slash her bra with his knife. Robin consistently refused to have sex with Robert, but claims that she just didn't want to have to do it in the car. So Robert checked into a motel deep in the Kenai Peninsula at Cooper Landing, where he and Robin attempted to have transactional sex. But Robert failed to climax, which of course infuriated and humiliated him. And he decided at that point to drive Robin back to Anchorage. He threatened to kill Robin if she ever reported him. In fact, at one point, he even drove Robin deep into the wilderness where he seemingly considered whether or not to take her life right then and there.
Yeah.
But she somehow persuaded him not to harm her. So
he picked her up. No, he kidnapped her.
Yeah.
Right? And then he let her go, which is
interesting that he let her go.
Yeah.
So a theme that we're coming onto with Robert is that he only killed women that he felt were indecent or that wronged him. So the fact, I think, this is just my interpretation, the fact that she was essentially a good girl and was doing everything he said, allowed her to live. I also think this was early on for him, and he didn't quite have that, penchant for killing. He was getting there.
Yeah.
But I also think it's interesting that some survived and some did not.
Yeah.
So now Robin's at the police precinct after getting wind of the discovery of Celia's body in the wilderness, the same wilderness where he had taken her and threatened to kill her. Now, in those pre-digital days, law enforcement didn't exactly have a database of local perverts, mischiefs, deviants, and criminals. They simply maintained what they referred to as the asshole book, which contained photographs of every known predator in the area. After meticulously looking through the asshole book, Robin exclaimed, "That's him. That's him," pointing, of course, to Robert Hansen.
Who is well known by the police because he is doing terrible things to women and just getting off.
Exactly. He was actually the first photograph in the asshole book. She also made the following statement to Sergeant Gilmore. Quote, I may be doing something that some people don't think is totally acceptable, and it may not be, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because that Robert Hansen guy is probably a premeditated, cold-blooded killer who has killed before. He said he has killed before, and everything he said was absolutely true. Everything he said he would do to me came true. Everything he said he would do, he did. Every threat he made, I believed. Mm-hmm. And if he says he's killed people, I believe he's killed people. And if you've got a young girl who's been killed around the same time and in the same area, then I believe it was Hansen who killed her. I believe he'll kill me, too.
I was actually thinking about how brave it was of her to go to the police with that information, knowing that, selling your body to pay for your heroin habit is a really, obviously, tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
You're doing 2 illegal things, if not more. And she went to the police.
Mm-hmm. She did. So brave.
I know.
And listen to this also. And this just kind of also answers your previous question of why did he let her go? Why did he let her live? He also obtained her parents' address from her purse and he wrote it down.
Yeah.
And he took it and he put it in his wallet and he showed her, if you go to the police or you report me, I know where your parents live.
And she still did.
And she still did it. Yep. So, lo and behold, Robert was picked up. Of course, he vehemently denied his involvement in Celia's brutal death, as well as the rape, kidnapping, and assault of Robin. While the police lacked conclusive evidence directly linking him to Celia, authorities did possess a writing sample that placed him at the motel where Robin said that he took her.
Okay.
Because, thinking that he was being slick, Robert used an alias but signed into the motel. Remember how they used to have the books on the counter?
Yeah.
Regardless of what name he wrote down, it was still his handwriting, which matched the handwriting found on a small piece of paper in his wallet that contained the address of Robin's parents.
I said, I was 8 when they were using books. I don't remember signing.
You don't remember? I remember it. I mean, I also was super young, but I remember it. However, and this is, again, police hesitated to use this handwriting sample as evidence, as they claimed that technically they should have obtained a search warrant before looking through his wallet.
Yeah, I mean, process and all that stuff.
So in the end, they didn't do anything with that particular piece of evidence. And that, along with many other reasons we're going to go on to here, has fueled theories of police corruption, incompetence, and or negligence throughout the case of the Butcher Baker.
Yeah.
Many officers were familiar with Robert and regularly patronized his bakery, leading some to believe that they prioritized protecting him, their local baker and prized hunter, over investigating the disappearances of sex workers.
Like Gus Fring.
What?
It's like Gus Fring.
What's that?
Gus Fring was the major player, major drug dealer in Breaking Bad, but he owned Pollo Locos.
Yes.
And he donated to the Police Benevolent Association and all that stuff. So it's it obviously can't be him.
Yeah, that's completely accurate.
Familiarity, yeah.
When Robert was ultimately charged at the Anchorage Superior Court with rape, kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon in Robert Patterson's case, he just pleaded no contest to the previous assault on his customer, Susan, in exchange for the DA dropping the charges involving Robin. Again, because when it came to sex workers, the cops and legal systems seemed to be able to do whatever they wanted to do in terms of making calls, which meant that Robert Hansen's criminal career was far from over. In fact, it was really just getting started. So we're leaving off part 1 with a pop quiz.
Okay.
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz.
What came to light following Robin's statement to the police that would forever follow Robert around thereafter?
What came to light during Robin's statement to the police that
Yeah.
would follow Robert around forever?
A, that Robert had a sexual fetish for bestiality.
Bestiality.
B, that Robert made women call him by his father's name during sex. C, that Robert had a deformed penis.
Oh, man. What was the first one?
He had a fetish for bestiality.
Bestiality, call me by my father's name, or deformed penis. See?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. According to Robin, Robert's penis was, quote, shaped funny. It was short but very large around, which earned him the nickname amongst the police force, Dimple Dick.
Dimple Dick?
Yeah. I was trying to figure that one out myself. I was like, I don't know. It was a different time,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, penises were always penises. But
Yeah, see, that guy's got a dimple dick. Eh.
exactly.
But it's the 90s, so maybe not.
So that's part one.
Okay.
In part two, we are getting into the crux of what has made Robert Hansen, aka the Butcher Baker, aka Bob, one of the most infamous and depraved serial killers of all time.
Crux.
We're going to discuss how he began hunting his victims in the Alaskan wilderness, a twisted evolution of his passion for big game hunting, and a horrifying extension of his desire for control and dominance. We will also discuss Robert Hansen's very twisted psychology, and I'm going to introduce you to a brand new, never talked about before on this show, conceptual framework that explains the psychological functioning of serial killers.
Really?
So part two is going to be lit.
Okay.
But that was part one, laying the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Any questions?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
I feel like I just went through fucking hell and I'm like, any questions?
Please say no.
Please say no. I'm
No, I'm
sweating.
sure they'll all be
kidding.
answered in part two.
Hopefully, but if not, I hope I can answer them if you ask them.
They may come up.
So I know that we're going to go into part two and we're going to continue this conversation, but I was wondering if first you had a Tank's titty for us.
You know I got a Tank's titty.
I do.
Ready to rock and roll.
Let's go.
I don't know how applicable this is going to be to most people. It's just something that I heard the other day that really had an impact on me. In recovery, right? One of your jobs, if you want to stay sober or clean one day at a time, is to initiate/pursue conscious contact with a higher power, right?
Okay.
So I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said that sometimes, because it's such a tricky thing, because it's like, am I in contact? I don't know. Like, am I just feeding myself these ideas that I want to be true, that I'm telling myself are as a result of this connection or whatever? He goes, sometimes conscious contact with God is just being in touch with someone who has that.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like by proxy?
Well, no, it's more like, so like when I go to meetings, the reason I go to meetings is because I feel like God speaks to me through people in the meeting. And if I had a place, which I do, where I knew that if I went, I may hear amazing things that, messages that God's trying to communicate to me. Would I go there? Yeah, of course I'd go there.
Right.
And like every meeting I go to, I get something like incredible out of it, some giant revelation. Some are bigger than others, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was a big one. Like, if you can't establish conscious contact with God and you're having a hard time or you're feeling like maybe it's not working for you, get in touch with someone who is or who does have that.
I mean, that's essentially what happens with us. Because you have that connection and I don't, but I've told you recently that I feel closer to that connection than I ever had in my entire life. And I think it's because I've been seeing you every single week for the last year and a half. And so it's like not contagious. I don't want to say that, but like, I think it speaks to what you're saying.
So one of the main tenets of this fellowship that I'm in, or one of the main like needle movers, is that conscious higher power, however you want to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that like allows people to go, all right, well, I like nature, or I like the ocean, or I like the idea of a universe or a benevolent creator, or just kind of like we're in a simulation. Whatever it is to you, it's nice to be connected to something bigger than you, because then you feel like you're connected to everything that's ever happened and anybody that's ever lived, rather than being isolated, which, as we spoke about in this case, is hell.
Yes.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Socially, spiritually, emotionally, whatever. Not being around people, we are a herd animal, and we benefit from communing with each other.
Right.
In a physical sense and a mental sense, like sharing ideas, sharing food, sharing effort, whatever. So
I like it.
I heard that the other day. Kind of that titty rolled out a little bit weird, but
No, I got the full frontal view on that. Got it.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. So with that said, thank you for doing all that work. I'm looking forward to seeing what you bring in part 2. I'm sure it's like crazy.
Well, it gets really crazy because we're really going to speak to his MO.
I'm sure. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to your presentation of said information.
Thank you, sir.
As I always do.
And I really, really, really look forward to delivering it.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank you.
Part 1, consider it nailed. All right? But if you made it this far, you're a real one, and get ready to dive into part 2. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.